Rain pounded the empty highways of Hollow Creek, drumming a relentless rhythm on the roof of Jared's car. He had been delivering parcels late into the night, fatigue pressing against his eyelids, and the dark road seemed to stretch endlessly, broken only by the dull glow of streetlights smeared into long, watery streaks by the storm. That's when he saw her, a young woman standing at the roadside, soaked to the skin, her long dark hair plastered against her pale face. Her white dress clung to her slender frame, wet and dripping onto the asphalt below. She lifted her thumb in a silent plea, shivering despite the shelter of the night. Every instinct screamed at Jared to keep driving, but he slowed and pulled over, heart hammering. The woman slid into the passenger seat without a word, leaving a trail of cold water on the floor mats. Her presence was chilling, a cold breath against the interior of the car, and Jared's eyes flicked nervously to the dashcam, its red recording light silently capturing the beginning of something terrifying he could not yet comprehend. For several long minutes, the car was consumed by silence. Jared attempted small talk, asking if she needed to go home, where she had been, anything to break the oppressive quiet, but she never answered. Instead, her piercing blue eyes stared through the streaked windshield at something invisible, distant. Occasionally, Jared thought he saw subtle movements in the back seat, shadows flitting across the corners of his vision, shapes that didn't belong in the car. The dashcam continued recording, catching these anomalies in a way Jared's eyes could not. The woman's lips moved occasionally, whispering words he could not understand, her pale face illuminated by the ghostly reflection of the streetlights. Each glance in the rearview mirror made his pulse spike. Her gaze seemed to follow him in impossible ways, as though she existed simultaneously in the car and somewhere beyond it. The rain intensified, hammering the roof, echoing in the hollow silence, and Jared realized with a sinking dread that whatever had entered his car was not just another lost traveler, it was something far more insidious. Finally, a voice, soft, brittle, like glass, cut through the storm. "Turn at Willow Creek," she murmured. Jared's chest tightened. Willow Creek was a burnt-out neighborhood, abandoned for decades, its charred foundations whispered about in local legend. Hesitant, he slowed the car and glanced at the dashcam. The screen flickered unnaturally, and in the glow, fleeting shadows darted across the ruins, forms that should not have existed. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice trembling despite his effort to stay calm. She nodded slowly, a faint, unsettling smile tugging at her lips. Against every instinct, Jared turned onto the gravel road, tires crunching over debris, and a cold, oppressive weight seemed to press from every side. The storm blurred the edges of the world, but the figures in the dashcam were sharp, watching, waiting, as though the road itself had eyes. The gravel path ended at a rusted, narrow bridge, slick with rain, the iron rails slick and corroded. "Stop here," she instructed, her voice soft, commanding. Jared's hands tightened on the wheel, and for the first time, he noticed that her feet were not touching the floor. She hovered slightly, her long wet hair clinging to her pale skin in unnatural patterns. The dashcam captured her movement perfectly, though Jared's own eyes struggled to believe it. The temperature in the car dropped abruptly, ice crawling over his skin, his breath puffing out in thick clouds. "You don't belong here," she whispered, and her eyes, completely black, voids that seemed to swallow the light, fixed on him. A dread unlike anything he had ever felt rooted him to the seat, and he understood, deep in his bones, that she was not just lost or in need of a ride. She was something else entirely, something ancient, patient, and hungry for attention. Jared's heart thumped violently as he reached toward her, his voice caught in his throat. When he turned to look fully at the passenger seat, she was gone. The wet streaks on the floor mat were still there, small puddles reflecting the dim light, but the woman herself had vanished without a sound. His pulse hammered in his ears as he glanced at the dashcam footage. The recording showed her hovering in the seat, then, in an instant, she dissolved into a faint, misty figure standing in the middle of the bridge. The mist swirled unnaturally, the storm outside raging, and for the first time Jared felt the raw weight of fear, realizing that the dashcam had captured something impossible, something that refused to exist in the world of the living. Jared could not sleep for nights afterward. Every time he played back the dashcam footage, subtle differences emerged, shadows that weren't there before, fleeting reflections of her blue eyes in mirrors, in empty streets, in darkened windows. He scoured the internet, discovering an old urban legend about a vanishing hitchhiker who appeared soaked on Hollow Creek roads, always directing drivers toward abandoned, burnt-out places, and always disappearing before reaching any home. The story said few had survived encounters, and fewer had evidence. Jared held the dashcam footage in trembling hands, realizing that he now possessed one of the only recorded sightings. But possession came with fear. Something told him the woman had not finished her game, that her attention was fixed on him, waiting for the next opportunity to appear. Weeks later, driving home from another late shift, Jared felt the same dread crawling up his spine. The dashcam still recorded, blinking its steady red light in the dark. A tap at the passenger window made him glance over, and she was there. Standing outside, dripping wet, the faintest smile curling at the corner of her lips. Her long dark hair plastered to her face, white dress soaked and clinging, blue eyes piercing, pale skin gleaming in the streetlights. She raised a hand slowly, pointing ahead, wordless but commanding. Jared's hands shook, gripping the wheel so tightly he thought it might snap. The storm continued to rage, reflections dancing across wet asphalt, but the street felt smaller, closed in, the air thick. He realized, with horror, that from that night on, every road, every dark turn carried the same warning: some passengers never leave, and the dashcam always remembers.